Hello and welcome to a demonstration of My DataStore. My DataStore allows access to Salesforce data while offline and disconnected from our network with Swyft Mobile for Salesforce. Users with appropriate permissions will be able to edit, create, and delete Salesforce records while offline, just as they would from the desktop while they're online, or with Swyft Mobile for Salesforce when they're connected to a network. All data in My DataStore is stored securely in the BlackBerry Dynamics Secure File System. This video is going to walk you through how to use My DataStore and answer some questions you guys may have about it. To begin with, on the left-hand side of my screen, I have a web browser showing Salesforce on the desktop connected to a network. On the right-hand side of my screen, I have a phone with Swyft Mobile for Salesforce running as well. And let me move that off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first set up My DataStore. Now, for a user to go ahead and set up My DataStore for the first time, they'll need to select the gray Swyft icon to open up the Swyft App Settings menu and select the My DataStore icon. After initially enabling My DataStore, the application pulls down all of the records and objects that user has access to from Salesforce. Sometimes this can take a moment, but once all that information is synced down, the user will be able to operate offline using the information that's cached within My DataStore. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and throw this device on the right-hand side of our screen into airplane mode. So now every interaction that I have with the Swyft Mobile for Salesforce app is working offline using My DataStore. So I'm going to go ahead and start off by selecting a contact. Let's say we need to get a new number for this Phil Sawyer individual. Now we can see in Swyft the phone number is 904 and then a bunch of ones. On the desktop, if I refresh this window, you'll see that's indicative in Salesforce as well. But let's go ahead and let's say we wanted to make an offline edit to a record. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's scroll through this record and change the phone number. Let's go ahead and change the last 4 digits to 2s. Now when I save that contact I've edited, if I refresh my browser window, which is online, you'll see that that edit has not been pushed over to Salesforce since the user is obviously offline and they'll need to connect to their network and resync using My DataStore for that edit to flow through. Let's go ahead and go into accounts, another object. And let's go ahead and add an account. Let's say while I'm offline, I found a new potential opportunity. I can save that, and we can see that the Hemingway Company is my most recent account. However, when I go to the Salesforce browser window on the desktop and I refresh that, we'll see that the Hemingway Company is no longer the most recent one. So that's because that this browser is currently connected to a network and the device isn't. However, all these changes that are being saved in Swyft are getting securely saved into My DataStore for when that user is connected back to their network. Let's go ahead and go through another example. Let's say a user deletes a record while offline. That can occur too using Swyft and My DataStore. Let's select delete. And although it does appear in this list, and after I refresh, we'll see that the Vulcan Company no longer is in the offline phone. However, we refresh the window on the left, we'll see it's still there because it's connected online. Let's do something else. Let's force a merge conflict to take place between both devices. So let's going into Lincoln Incorporated while offline. Let's say I want to change this website to something like this. And let's say on the browser, I want to do it, somebody else at the same time as when I'm offline makes that same change. Now that I've done a couple individual use cases, let's go ahead and sync back to my network and show you what happens in Swyft using My DataStore and that offline connectivity. So turning this device off airplane mode and returning to a state where I'm connected to the Wi-Fi, I'm going to go ahead and go back into the My DataStore menu. If I go into pending changes, you can see those pending changes were made. And the record accounts on this first page has changed as well. But let's go ahead and see what that looks like on the desktop. If I go into Phil Sawyer, I can see that offline change that I made in Swyft Mobile for Salesforce is now reflected on the desktop. If I go into Accounts and I refresh, I can see the Vulcan Corporation has been deleted and the Hemingway Company has been created, just as it was done online or done offline. And if I go into Lincoln Corporation, let's actually go one step further and select that change that was made. See, with Swyft and My DataStore, you can actually choose which value you want to be applied to that field. So we're going to go ahead and say that we wanted it to be the google.com. If I click Save, that change will be made to Salesforce. Now when I refresh this window one last time, we can see that that merge conflict value that was resolved in Swyft Mobile for Salesforce is now reflected in Salesforce. This has been a brief little presentation of My DataStore and the offline functionality for Swyft Mobile for Salesforce. If you have any questions, please reach out to your Swyft representative. Thank you.